Hello, my friends. My name is Jack, and this is Sentinel Circle. Thank you for being here today. I greatly appreciate it. This next series of videos are going to be rather unscripted, more so than normal. In fact, the topic for the next 3 videos is going to be random musings. So for those who don't know, the last 2 weeks I've been away for training for my job. Because of that, I don't have like a way to record videos and edit videos on the road. I'm slowly developing that, but I'm trying to do things on a very limited budget. So I just don't have the capability of doing it. But that doesn't mean, that I've been idle. I've jotted down some notes, and I worked on some things, specifically the Discord. I felt that the Discord out of all the social media was the most used, and that needed a revamp. So most of my time was dedicated to dealing with that. There was a little bit of work done on the website, but as you know, I've kind of put that not on pause, but on the back burner. There's just other things that needed more attention. That being stated, so I'm going to go ahead and start here. So these last 2 weeks kind of really, I don't want to say awoken me, because like it's hard to awaken when you've already been woke. And I'm saying woke as, alert to the issues around you, not woke in the slur. I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to just say it, because again, I want this to be as raw as possible. It's not like I'm done talking about problems. You should always bring attention to problems and causes and all that stuff. But the one thing I've noticed when people like me and others sit here and talk about problems, they don't really offer anything. They don't offer new ideas or ideas in general. And I think there's a couple different reasons for that. One is at least in my situation, it's fear. I don't want to alienate people. But I realize that you have to learn to speak from the heart, because if you don't, people kind of know that. You know what I mean? They know when you're an actor versus when you're a truth sayer. And the situation is how do I want to say this? I want to be authentic to not just myself, but the cause, my cause. So, in an effort to kind of be, cast a wide as possible net, I kind of toned down some of the things that I believe in. And I feel that was more of a detriment than it was a positive. So you're going to see me in the next few videos, and possibly from here on out, really hammering hard certain aspects of what I believe in. For example, the one thing that a lot of people actually have resonated with, believe it or not, is the whole community aspect, which I got to be honest with you, that surprised me. I was surprised that there's a big demand for things like community. And, when I say community, in a way, I do mean like a physical community. But at the same time, I mean community in the more broader sense, as in shared experiences and shared beliefs. So we're going to emphasize that a bit more, specifically on the physical aspect, but also on the metaphysical aspect. Let's see here. how else do I want to say this? In terms of the community aspect, I mean, I sat down and really thought about this. What do I want? Well, at some point, 'cause this is how I see it. Everyone talks about stuff hitting the fan, and I'm trying my hardest not to swear. I'm not going to really edit. So if a couple of naughty words do get through, I apologize. But I don't really want to edit this because I want this to be authentic for what's going to happen. But when people talk about stuff hitting the fan, me personally, I think stuff has already hit the fan. And I think that we're just seeing that stuff ooze from the fan at this point. It's already hit it. We shut it off. Now we got like a giant mess, and it just seems like it's getting worse and worse and worse. Like the whole, I don't know if anybody knows what's going on with itch.io and Steam, but the payment processors have kind of cracked down hard on both those entities. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. At the end of the day, they're a business. They have to make money. And when the business that gives them the money, 'cause what a lot of people think is when we go and buy something, be it in person, online, all that stuff, that little piece of plastic, that little debit, credit card, whatever, that's not you. That is a company. In this case, Visa, MasterCard, there's a couple of others out there, okay? You are authorizing Visa to make the purchase on your behalf. The problem is, and we saw this somewhat in the Second Amendment community, where the payment processors were saying, okay, well, you can go ahead and do that, but we're going to classify these purchases so that way, whatever the reasoning was. I don't remember what the reasoning was, but the fear is they're creating a list of people who buy firearms and firearms accessories for whatever down the road, which is a very scary proposition. It's the same thing now with Steam and Itch. They're going after the more adult-oriented content. And it wasn't like they decided this on their own. No. They were approached by this group based out of Australia. And from what I read, it seemed like all it took was 1,000 emails, and that's when the threats from Visa, MasterCard came into Steam and itch.io, saying, you either remove this stuff, regulate it, or we will remove you. Like I said, I don't blame them because at the end of the day, they are in the business of making money, but, that's a scary proposition that an unelected company, even though they are publicly traded, they're still, in a sense, unelected. They were able to just bully their way into making changes in with other companies. Where does it stop? We don't, everyone sits there and says, well, if you don't like it, make your own. Well, the problem is with payment processors, you physically can't. The regulations are so immense. I mean, I've heard rumors that Elon Musk is attempting to, and even he's struggling, and he's the world's richest man, which I understand he's the world's richest man, but even he doesn't come close to some of these companies. And that's really what it boils down to is the companies are bureaucracies. They are entities within their own sense. And that is why I'm saying that the stuff has already hit the fan. The precedent has been set, and everyone says, well, okay, go ahead and sue them. Well, again, you're not understanding what's going to happen here. To sue someone, first off, you got to find a lawyer who's even willing to take the case. A lot of lawyers are not willing to take cases unless it's so egregious, so obvious that they know they can win hands down. So if there's any doubt in your case, already you're done. Then on top of that, they're going to want money. Unless it's like so blatantly obvious they could win, maybe they'll go pro bono. But on the whole, they're going to want a lump sum up front, and then they're going to want hourly on top of that. So, and then that's even just to get to arbitration, which you're going to be required to do. You can't just go, from finding an attorney and retaining him to a courtroom in nothing flat. It takes years, and that lawyer is going to have a team. He's going to have a team of at minimum paralegals, minimum, if not a whole team of lawyers working with him. He's going to want experts in certain fields, in certain practices of law. And that's what I'm saying is you're just not going to do it. Maybe Elon could find a bunch of lawyers who are willing to do it, but he's got other things going on in his life. He doesn't want to deal with that kind of stuff. Or maybe he does to get some brownie points back. I don't know. But that's my whole point is I don't want to say they won because they didn't win. It's more they won this round. Because Steam has actually changed their rules. Now they got the 15th rule. In fact, let me look it up real fast. Steam 15th rule. Okay. And it says right here, content that may. Now, here's the one thing that I want people to understand is when it comes to words, and this is why I'm so anal about definitions, because words do have meaning. They have very specific meaning, especially in places like, a court of law. And yes, you can go ahead, give me the whole sovereign citizen argument, whatever. The point is this is the reality we do live in. I don't deal with, this is how it should be. Well, okay, great. That's fine if that's how the world should be. But I don't live in the should land. I live in what is land. And this is how it is in what is land. So the rule states here, content that may, key word there, may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks or internet network providers, in particular certain kinds of adult-only content. So, in order to violate that rule, they're making a judgment call on what the payment processors, card networks, banks, or internet network providers may not like. Think about that. It's not they won't, because there's, what's to stop them from saying that Assassin's Creed is too violent? You need to remove it. What's to stop them to say that anything published before 2000 that was, written by a bunch of, who knows what guys, let's get rid of it. See, and that's my point, is they single-handedly damaged an entire industry with one diktat. I don't know about you, but that to me is just horrifying. That they can wake up one day and say, yeah, we're not gonna pay your bills like that anymore. I mean, I hate to say it. I'm not one for government regulation, but when you have a business that essentially is a duopoly, that's essentially what it is. You can't, everyone sits there and says, again, if you don't like it, go make your own. Well, you physically can't make your own. So my point is if that's the case, then they have to be treated like a utility. There has to be fairness involved. And unfortunately, I think that that's kind of the end goal. is now the federal government can say, well, now you're not treating businesses properly. We're going to come in and regulate you. And we've seen what happens with that. I don't know where this goes. I genuinely don't know. But it's scary no matter what. So then the next question is, okay, well, if that's the case, well, then we need a different form of payment. Well, okay. Steam for a while there took Bitcoin. Look at how well that worked out for them. They stopped. How many businesses are dealing in Bitcoin? Not that many. I mean, all Bitcoin seems to me is that it's just trading. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like you could buy anything tangible with Bitcoin. And the problem is Bitcoin has gone through some significant swings that if I were a business, I wouldn't take Bitcoin. I mean, who's to say that what I have in the bank at that moment is going to be like that tomorrow or even an hour from now? And there's been so many scams with Bitcoin and Shitecoin and all those other coins that the faith has been completely destroyed in that situation. And I really hate to say this. There was a documentary that I watched years ago, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for what I'm about ready to say. Fine, whatever. Give me the flack because that's engagement and that helps my numbers. So go ahead and do it. But I was watching this documentary on how money is made, and they said that at the end of the day, what makes money is faith. And at the time, I was younger, I didn't really understand it, but realistically, that is the truth. Even if it was backed by gold, well, what the hell is gold? Like, it's just a shiny metal. Yeah, it's got a couple of applications here or there, but like at the end of the day, it's there. It's a metal. It doesn't really do much. There's a couple of industrial applications, but that's about it. All the financial whatevers is built on faith. And if the faith is shaken so much, well, then there's no value there. All money is a transformative item. It does nothing on its own. It just sits there. I mean, here, I got a penny. Right there. I don't know if you can see it. There's a penny. Okay, penny, go do something. Fly. See? Doesn't do anything. It just sits there. A penny right now is worthless. It just sits on my desk. If I had 100 pennies, well, that's $1. I can do something with that. But a penny on its own, it does nothing until I go somewhere to go do something with it. A penny does not do me anything unless I go buy something or I go do something with that money. Everyone talks about having physical gold. Well, again, that's great. But what does that do for you? There was this show that I watched years ago. It was on Sci-Fi Network. It was I can't remember the name of the show, but basically, the whole premise was it was a small town in Middle America, and there was a nuclear war between us and God knows what. And basically, they go outside one day, they see, a mushroom cloud out in the distance, and it's basically this town is trying to deal with it, deal with the whole situation. And one of the most interesting aspects of the show was they went to a bigger town, and the people there were trading in salt. And the reasoning is salt absorbs iodine, radioactive iodine, and there were some other uses for it. I can't remember the name of the show. It got canceled, it came back, and then it got canceled again. It was very interesting. But the whole point is in that universe, gold was worthless. Salt was the currency of value. I mean, Fallout bottle caps, which I don't understand where bottle caps came from. I'm sure that there's an in-universe explanation, but my point is who's to say that gold, if the world ends tomorrow, is going to be the currency of choice? We don't know, is what I'm trying to get at. I know that's kind of a long about way of saying that we're, kind of hosed in this situation, but we are. But anyways, back to the whole Steam situation. What bothers me is some old biddies in Australia, of all freaking places. The world's laughing joke. Sorry, Australians who are watching. They sit there and they get to decide what I can buy here in the United States. They have nothing to do with me in any other regard, and they infringed on my right to buy whatever it is I please. My hope is there's going to be a challenger to come up. I know Itch has like a second website where you can buy that stuff, but again, who's to say that these old biddies find out that website and write another 1,000 emails to Visa, MasterCard, and get that shut down? But that's my whole point, is this should have been our wake-up call right there. Because if the precedent has been set, now again, I understand cash is king, that's great, but you can't buy everything in person. Unfortunately, there's just not a market for it. You have to go online, which means you have to use one of these payment processors. And not everybody takes things like Stripe. I can't even think of other ones. I know there's other ones out there, but you're stuck doing that business somehow. Same thing with Bitcoin. Not many people take Bitcoin. Maybe in the future it gets a little bit more stable and people start taking it, but I don't see that happening. There's too much money in Bitcoin now, and it kind of screwed itself. So where does that leave us? Well, I hate to say it, but I think we are way past that point. Like I said, our society, believe it or not, our society is built on not law, but precedent, legal precedent. Legal precedent is what makes a law have teeth. Because I don't know how many people here have studied law. When I was going through my legal issues, I kind of had to do some serious studying. And I understand basically where law kind of comes from. You have obviously law that comes from Congress and is signed in by the president, and that becomes law. It becomes enforceable, right? Then you also have state law, which goes through a similar process. It goes through the state house, signed by the governor. The difference between the two, obviously, is federal law affects all 50 states, and outside the U.S., where state law only affects the interior of that said state. And then, of course, you have each state has some form of Supreme Court, which, if the law is challenged, then it has to go through the Circuit Court, Court of Appeals, and then if that state Supreme Court or the Supreme Court wants to take it up, they have every ability. If they don't, then the higher court rules sticks. Then you have what's called precedent, which is the different cases that are brought before which invoke that law. And basically where the precedent comes into play is it hones the law down from basically, let me rephrase this. When law is made, it's very broad. Very broad. It does some very weird things, and don't take my word on this. I'm not a lawyer. Okay. I just know enough to be somewhat dangerous. I'm sure there's going to be someone that comes in and corrects me. Fine, whatever. Go ahead, correct away. But anyways, the precedent is what takes that big hulk of a law and it kind of whittles it down to more of a sharp edge. Some of the famous ones was like Brady v. Arizona, I think is the case. Hang on, let me look this up before I stick my foot in my mouth here. Brady v. Pardon me, Brady v. Maryland. So in this situation, and why this case specifically matters is not every jurisdiction, but a lot of jurisdictions have what's called a Brady list, and what this list is it's a list of police officers who've been known to be dishonest on the stand. Only the prosecution has this list, the DA's office. And they use that list to determine if a case is valid, who to put on the stand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't know about this list until about 10 years ago when I was running for public office. But basically, you as a defendant, you don't get this list. You can request this list, but you don't get this list. And the Brady list only came about because of this case. It went to the Supreme Court. It was Brady v. Maryland. And I'll just read it here real fast. It says here, I'm trying to condense this down because it's, a good paragraph here. Okay. So it says here, prior to trial, petitioner's counsel had requested the prosecution to allow him to examine the companion's extrajudicial statements. Several of these were shown to him, but one in which the companion admitted to the actual killing because it was a murder case was withheld by the prosecution and did not come to the petitioner's notice until after he had been tried, convicted, and sentenced, and after his conviction has been affirmed by the Court of Appeals in Maryland. In a post-conviction proceeding, the Maryland Court of Appeals held that the suppression of evidence by the prosecutor denied petitioner due process of law, and it remanded the case for a new trial of the question of punishment, but not in the question of guilt, since it was of the opinion that nothing in the suppressed confession could have reduced the petitioner's offenses below murder of the first degree. I don't think this is the right case. Hang on. Hang on here. I'm sorry. No, it's Brady v. Maryland. It doesn't really say how that happened here. There's a whole page. I would strongly encourage everyone to go look up Brady v. Maryland. But there's another one that everyone who's ever watched any cop show would be familiar with, and that's Miranda. You when the police arrest you here in this country, they read you your Miranda rights. That's Miranda v. Arizona. Miranda, Maranda, v. Yeah, Miranda v. Arizona. And that one was done in 1966. It says here the Supreme Court, in which the court ruled the law enforcement in the United States must warn a person of their constitutional rights before interrogating them. So again, that's one direction of law that a lot of people are not familiar with, right? Is you get a lawsuit and then, that establishes precedent, which then becomes basically like an addendum to law, in this case, like I said, you have to have your Miranda laws read to you before you are arrested. Otherwise, anything that is said cannot be used in court. Same thing with you got to have an attorney, which don't get me started on that. Anyways, my point in all this is back to the whole Steam thing is you're not going to find any legal recourse in this situation. So then what's the next step? Well, depends on how extreme you want to get. I am of the opinion that we need to start thinking about establishing some kind of community, some kind of whatever, and just start isolating. I know that there's been a lot of talk about that. There's this one Appalachia community that a lot of people have recently gotten interested in the news because they're apparently for those of, how do I want to say this? Caucasian only. I don't think it needs to be that extreme. But I'm seeing it more and more every day. A lot of people are just fed up. They want to break away. They just don't know how. And I know that there's a lot of like people who are in the prepper community who talk about, what they're going to do if stuff hits the fan, which I understand this. The problem is what defines stuff hitting the fan. I mean, like there are some people that think that if a dirty bomb were to hit, now you're screwed and you got to run and all that stuff. Well, okay, that's fine. That's not particularly where I'm feeling right now. But I've noticed that a lot of these places just don't think about the logistics. Yeah, they train, they prep, they do all that stuff, but they really don't think about the logistics that they need to establish. So then what do you do? Well, like I said, I am of the opinion that breaking away is probably the best. Simply because I just don't see a future anymore. I know I am not going to have kids. I'm not going to have a wife. I'm not going to have a lot of these things. So I might as well try myself because, I mean, I don't know how many of you follow Brandon Trueblood. I watched his live stream where he talked about going monk mode, which is men only know see you next Tuesday, but he used the K spelling. Which that's fine, but he talked about having a couple of acres out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, well that's nice for Brandon, and I'm very happy for him. But where does that leave the rest of us? I don't know. I would love to be able to buy a plot of land out in God knows where, but here's the problem with that. It can be taken away from you so easily. You have things like eminent domain. You have things like civil asset forfeiture, which, everyone talks about that in the sense of money. Well, land can be seized too if it's under the assumption that a crime was committed there. It's not as often done, but it can be done. Property can be seized. Even though they're referencing things like cars. Well, at what point does a court say, well, property can also mean land, and rights and all that stuff? Like I could work myself to death and go buy a plot of land and invite all these people out there. And then all of a sudden the government comes in and says, no, you can't do that. Shuts me down, seizes my land and kicks me out. I mean, freaking Joker, again, tried to do the whole men's retreat thing. He got $250,000. And okay, look. I take your opinion of Joker and put it off to the side. Let's go over the logistics of this. He went over the whole, he's got to have septic, power, bathrooms. He can't set up porta potties. He has to have like an actual functional bathroom building, all these things just so people can visit. insurance and all that stuff. Like, he went down the list, and yeah, that made sense to me, and it sounds like a freaking headache. And this is what I'm talking about, is you're constantly told no. You're constantly told no. Not by just government entities, but by private business entities as well, who is basically rammed down your throat. So what I'm trying to say is, it's kind of like, you in a way, you have to do things that you wouldn't normally think you would do. You can have all the money in the world, and it's still gonna be roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. I don't like it one bit. What time am I at right now? I'm trying to keep these under an hour, for reasons. I don't know really what it boils down to. So there was that reflection. My next reflection was, I'm going to switch over to this article here. Let me go ahead and fade it. Okay. Someone in our Discord gave me a name, Earl Silverman. We're going to kind of learn. I want to do a whole video dedicated to him, but we're just going to do a light introduction to him. This man is a hero. I want everybody to know this. This man is a hero in my book. He has done good work. He ran into the exact same problems I'm talking about, and because of that, he saw one option, and that was self-unalivement. I'm not going to do that. There's other things I would do before I get to that point, but I'm not going to do that. Anyways, so Earl Silverman, Canadian domestic abuse survivor, activist, and men's rights advocate who founded the Men's Alternate Safe House, also known as MASH. Very apt, manly term. I appreciate that. But this is what caught me really hard. The only privately funded domestic abuse shelter for men in Canada, and the Family of Men's Society, which operated phone lines to assist victims. He also served as the Canadian liaison for the National Coalition for Men. June 14th is unofficially Earl Silverman Day. Anyways, he ended his life at the age of 64 back in 2013. He really tried his hardest. He made that house. He owned the house, right? He owned the house. He was paying for it out of his own pocket. He got maybe a couple grants. I think there was one here that was talked about, right here. An erroneous claim that MASH 4077 took in its first refugee in 2011, which appears on a number of other websites, is based on a misreading of Earl's announcement in 2011 on the NCFM website, not of the first time a male victim has been housed, but the first time a male victim has both been referred to by the local provisional government and funded by a grant of $1,000 for them. So the dude opened the house in 2004. 2004. That's what the Wikipedia says. He didn't get his first referral from the government. He's had men come in before that, but he didn't get his first referral until 2011. That's what, 7 years. 7 years, and he only got $1,000 from the government. This man right here is a hero in my book. He did something, he believed in it so much that he spent his own money building this house up. And then in only 2 years later, 2 years later, MASH hosted about 20 fleeing men and children in the first 4 months of 2013 before being shut down. With no public funds to help, Silverman funded the running costs and bills himself, failing to raise significant amounts from either government or private donors. Family violence has gone from a social issue to only a woman's issue. So any support for men is interrupted as being against women, or interpreted as being against women. In early 2013, Silverman announced that the sanctuary would be closing because he could no longer afford to run it due to a lack of funding. He sold the house shortly after to a man named Stephen Howitt, and he ended himself the next day inside the garage. They found him. 2 years after he got that $1,000 and he had to shut down, he was hosting 20 men. I don't know how big this house was, but I would imagine it wasn't that big. And he was hosting 20 men and children in there. How many women's shelters exist out there? Like when I lived on the Oregon coast, I lived right next to one. And I got to be honest with you, it seemed like a party house sometimes versus an actual women's shelter. Not to say that women don't deserve shelters. I mean, there are some pretty violent men out there, but, you know, like, I know that there's a lot of violent women out there too, and men are stuck. You know, there was one thing that I saw. Here's his final letter. By the way, I'm going to post both of them under this video. I think it's important. And again, we're going to do another video on this. I can't see this. I can't find it. It doesn't matter. Anyways. Yeah, right here. Alberta spends $60 million for women and nothing for men. Where is the equality? Where is my dignity as a victim who could not reach the point of a survivor? +20 years gone. This man was a hero, and I hope everyone really thinks about him. What I'm going to do is on the calendar, we're going to have a day to support him. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and come back to my handsome face. And we got one more topic that I want to talk about, which is homelessness. I got a list of things I want to talk. All these things are going to be their own independent videos, but this is more just random musings. I just want to talk about these things. About 15 minutes left. So, homelessness, you know what? Let's save it for the next video. Let's go back to Earl and my reflections on all this. So, my point in all this is I think that I don't want to say we're done. It's more, there's nothing else left. And I think that we really need to start actively talking about it. Because at this point, I don't feel like my interests are represented. You know, and I'm not talking about government. I'm talking about corporations too. You know, and I understand that they're not supposed to represent everybody. They're supposed to represent their interests, which is their shareholders, blah, 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 blah. But when their actions are actively impeding me, actively forcing me to change my behaviors, that's a problem. And I understand that, you know, a lot of people are like, well, okay, they banned, you know, adult entertainment games from websites. So what? Well, yes, they did that, but they also, remember, under the previous administration, they were talking about classifying Second Amendment purchases. Look, I get it. Okay, I get it. It may not be directly affecting you, but there's going to be a point where it does, and you're going to want people to talk about it with you. Okay. In order for that to happen, you need to seriously think about, okay, well, if this is happening now, what could come down the road? Who's to say that they don't ban you from, I don't know. Nothing's really coming to mind because, like, we're so early into this. Like, who's to say that, like, because it happened under the truckers, they were debanked. You know what I mean? And I guess that's really what I should be talking about, is the whole debanking situation. Could you imagine waking up one day and all your money that is in your bank account, because you can't have a physical check anymore, you can't go cash that check. You woke up one day and all your funds are seized and you can't do anything about it. Now you're starving, your kids are starving, whatever. All because you have a naughty opinion. There are people that live in China right now that are going through that. So my question to you is, do you have to actually live it to understand it and to appreciate it? Or do you want to say something about it now? Who's to say that one day you wake up and, the house that you wanted to buy out in the countryside, well, that's no longer allowed. For whatever reason, you have to go live in a 15-minute city or whatever conspiracy you want to come up with. Okay, quite frankly, I don't care about the conspiracies. Fine, have the conspiracies. But my point is this is happening today. It's not like it's some book that's talking about 20 years from now or whatever. No, this is happening today. We have to seriously start discussing this stuff, guys. I do appreciate people like Louise Rossman discussing it, and Mudahar and all those people discussing it. But it's the difference, I guess, is when they discuss it. And I'm not talking specifically about Louise. Louise is a true believer. But when it comes to other people, it just sounds like they're talking about just to talk about things for content. Like, to them, it's another Tuesday afternoon. And maybe that's where the issue is we're treating it like a Tuesday afternoon because like so much is happening that we can't keep up. I don't know. I just hope that, you watch these videos and you're like, okay, yeah, Jack's right. Maybe we should do something. The truth is I don't know yet what, and even if I did, I don't think I could talk about it on YouTube anyways, or Rumble, which if you're not subscribed to my Rumble, go ahead and subscribe. Shameless plug. But I really think that something needs to be done. I don't know what. I spent the whole week working on it. I have some ideas, but the question then becomes, well, if I go forward on it, who's going to be with me? Because I can't do it on my own. And even then, I have to lose 100 pounds. I'm at 297. I weighed myself today. I got to lose some serious weight. So I'm not even in a position to do anything about it, because you're going to need to be physically fit in order to do something about it. Either way, I guess the message that I'm trying to get across today is, if you're out of shape, get in shape. Okay? And I really mean that, because if you're going to do something, you have to be in shape. I'm not saying that you have to be the guy that does work in the military sense, but you have to be physically and mentally in shape, physically and mentally tough. That's the first step before you can do anything else. And I have to live by that. So in the future, there may be a couple of videos that I make where I'm actively walking and exercising, just as a way to kind of A, multitask, and B, I don't know, variety, and get out into the field and show people how to do things. I don't know. There's some other things I want to say real fast. We got about 10 minutes left before I end this video, so let's do this. Okay. If you guys want to reach me directly, obviously you can do the email thing, and the email's down there. I'm also gonna change up my well, I have Linktree. I really strongly suggest that if you want to reach me, go to Linktree. But I'm gonna, because I'm on Discord most of all. I'm gonna start really pushing hard on the Discord. I would strongly encourage you that if you don't have Discord, get one and meet us there, because I can talk a little bit more freely there. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to, not this week, but in the future, I'm going to start making like, kind of like a member only kind of situation. I'm going to make videos that are unlisted and post them in the Discord only. And that will allow me to kind of talk a little bit more freely. Maybe I'll just do those from Rumble. Just upload those on Rumble as unlisted and then have people meet me there. I don't know yet. I got to really think about that. And I hadn't had the chance to think about it because I was busy with other things. But either way, I really think that, because look, I don't believe in the individual in the way that a lot of people do. I think that individualism is great if you just want to be left alone. The problem is it's getting to the point where I personally think that we can't be left alone. You know, it would be nice if I could have a little bit of land and I'm left alone, but my experiences in living in the country, you're not left alone. You know, there's always going to be some kind of interference. You know, so then the next question is, okay, well, if there's interference and it's like that, well, then what do we do? I don't know yet. You know, like I said, I have ideas, but I don't think YouTube would even let me put those ideas out there. So I have to find a way to put those ideas out without people trying to remove it. And that was one of the main reasons for the website. Is, to me, paywalls and having your own website is like as close to freedom of speech as you can get on line. You know, because if you're on YouTube, we just saw this with one such popular YouTuber. He spurred a little too close to the sun and he burned himself to a crisp. I'm going to do a video on him in the future, but I got to be very tasteful because, you know, he really was kind of, I don't want to say out there. He spoke a lot of, I don't want to say truth, but it was more he said some things that a lot of people would pause and think about before they would say them. It was a breath of fresh air. He got a lot of subs really fast, but like I said, he spurred a little too close to the sun. And, you know, that's what they say about Icarus. He got too close to the sun, the wax melted, and he ended up crashing. And that's what happened to this dude. Now, his life is going to get a lot harder, and his wife's life is going to get a lot harder, too. And I'm actually going to probably reach out to him and say, hey, you know, hope everything's going well. Because, again, we're seeing this in life, in real life right now. You know, in places like the United Kingdom, grandmas are getting arrested. You know, grandmas are getting arrested, which, I mean, you know, I do believe in law and order, but I don't think it's law and order anymore. You know, because, like, the criminals are walking, meanwhile the peaceful protesters are getting slammed to the ground and thrown in cuffs and having their lives destroyed. And you know, I would like to start finding these people and reaching out to them and saying, hey, you know, come talk with me, you know. But I don't know. I don't know where to start is kind of what I'm getting at. And I'm kind of relying on my audience to tell me where to start. Now, granted, there's going to be a point where I do find a place to start, but I'm not quite there yet. Like I said, I'm a very meticulous person. I plan, I strategize, I think about it a lot. I want to get it right is what I'm kind of getting at, but I don't know how to get it right yet. So it's just going to take time. Okay. Anyways, I'm going to end the video here. We're about 55 minutes in. Like I said, there's going to be very light editing. So there's going to be 2 more videos like this. This is the first one. We're going to talk about some other things. You know, we'll figure it out from there. Anyways, I'm going to go. Thank you very much for being here. If you like my videos, please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Like I said, get Discord. You can meet us in the Discord and chat with us. And maybe we come to a good conclusion. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, I hope you have a great day. Thank you.